I'd like you to, each group, to report out your success factors. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to ask the reporter from each group to name one success factor at a time. And Kate will put them up on the screen simultaneously. So that way, the report out will be going around, and we'll have a few go-arounds with all the groups. And I'll probably try to go in some kind of order that might be easier. And then you don't have to repeat one that's up there already. You get a chance to use another one if you want. And we'll do this until we run out of time or run out of success factors. So we have about 10 minutes for this. So I'm going to start with group one. Kate, are you ready? Pressure. Wrong group? Sorry. No, we're good. We're ready. Set the example.
Well, Paul had a good example about 4 CEOs in the hospital industry who came together to address an issue, a crisis, with regard to HIV and the care the demand for care that was out there. And rather than doing it all by themselves or trying to address the problem individually, they came together and they used this crisis to come together. That led to conversations, and that led to successful collaboration. And by coming together and combining their resources, they are now saving, Paul, he said, $100,000 a year by funding this clinic, as opposed to having these patients go to the emergency rooms. So they took advantage of the crisis to have a conversation and to collaborate.
Okay. Collaboration coming together. Critical success factor. Table 2. And say your name. We haven't got a chance to just say your name.
Well, I'm Mark Adams, CEO of AHI Construction and member of the Nehemiah Emerging Leadership Program. Not in class, once you guys know that. We had a very lively discussion in regards to critical success factors. One that we identified is that in order to maintain momentum, the stakeholders involved must have an impact in the overall success, in the short-term and long-term success of the program. And without them standing at the table, there's opportunities as well as consequences of them not staying at the table.
Stakeholders, all stakeholders have to be at the table.
Must have an impact on the table.
They must have an impact on the final outcome. Okay. Thank you. Table 3.
I brought up Nancy Bowie, Smith Board of Directors. I brought up an example that was very analogous to SHIP and blueprint of the $127 million grant that SMUD won, and it was one of the first of its kind that had a true regional leadership through SMUD, Sac State, Los Rios, and Department of General Services in California. And what was successful was the collaborative leadership, but also that we were all ready. We were all organizationally ready to take on such a large endeavor with over $300 million project. And because of the collaboration, but also just the maturity of the organizations, we were successful and received the largest grant in California, but we're also able, because of our organizational maturity, to bring that plan forward. Because if you're not ready, and your teams aren't ready, and your organizations aren't ready, no matter how great your plan is, and you don't have the people to carry them out, it's not going to be successful.
So your critical success factor is collaborative leadership
and organizational readiness.
and organizational readiness.
Yeah, it works one here, but across the hall.
Table 4.
I'm Kim Box, and what we distilled as our first success factor is that all the stakeholders need to come together and understand the facts. So if you have facts and data as your grounding point, then you can't argue with something that's true. So that's our first success factor.
We're number 5. My name is Brian Dowd. I'm with Grant Construction, and one of the critical success factors we identified was that there was a clear value proposition that was developed, and oftentimes that comes from a stark reality of where we're headed. You know, they talked about that with the blueprint, that where we're headed is a crisis, and so to flip that around to say, to avoid that crisis, here's the value proposition, and getting really clear on what that value proposition is.
Clear value proposition. Let's go around. Let's
You want
go
6? I'm Patrick Mulvaney. Our first, our critical success factors, our first one was Collaboration with persistence, skepticism, and passion to identify common economic benefits.
Collaboration to identify common economic benefits. And
With persistence, skepticism, and passion.
collaboration with persistence, skepticism, and passion to identify a common economic benefit. Thank you. Table 7.
Somewhat of a theme, this is I'm Liz McClatchy, and somewhat of a theme, we felt the process didn't really start well unless there was a threat of dire consequences, with the recognition that breakthroughs happen when you have breakdowns.
Dire consequences. Table 9.
I'm John Weber, class 7. We had a lot of similar themes that have already been spoken of, but what we liked about when we evaluated Blueprint, the framework was established to have a dialogue. It was a big table, and that table was that there were a lot of voices at that table. So it allowed a regional dialogue about the issues. The consequences were clearly created. The vision was established based on an alternative scenario to the dire consequences if you did nothing, and then it was collaborative leadership that went across jurisdictional lines, which is something we're failing to see right now within our political bodies.
Okay, so you're seconding dire consequences and collaborative leadership.
Right.
Okay, we've all gone around once, so I'm going to go around again, and I'm going to ask you if you have any, and you don't have to, but if you have any other success factors that aren't up there, and then we'll discuss them all in plenary. Table 1, do you have any other success factors?
Phil Garcia, by the way. We had another success factor was identification of mutual self-interest, so and to address the crisis or issue at hand. Another one was rewarding risk. We talked about that, and to link it to how we might change public policy in California, maybe incentivizing the private sector to engage in public-private partnerships.
Okay, so
that's that theme of rewarding risk.
So rewarding risk, and I'm sorry, what was the first one?
Oh, identification of mutual self-interest to address the crisis.
Identification, mutual self-interest, and rewarding risk.
Yeah.
Table 2, do you have one to add?
Yeah, one to add. I believe in doability and capacity for change, as well as a buy-in from the community in regard to the processes.
Belief in doability and a capacity for change, as well as buy-in. Table 3, any to add?
We spoke about goals, but also shared accountability. We all on boards and commissions represent different constituencies, and we have our own needs and wants, but at the end of the day, in any collaborative process, we all have to be accountable for the outcomes and have some sort of measurement of were we successful, and how do we carry out the goals and vision and platform, and be accountable for those actions.
Shared accountability. Table 4, any to add?
We had consequences are more painful than the current course, and I think somebody had already added that, so. More dire.
Dire consequences.
Yeah, so I think someone already had that one, but the third one we had was really strong leadership and courage to drive the change. I think that's obvious, but it's also not always present. Yeah.
Really strong leadership to drive the change. Table 5.
I think others have talked about this, but I think it's important to be explicit around inclusivity. We talked about having people at the table, but it's making sure that circle's big enough that we get all the stakeholders in the process.
Inclusivity, getting all the stakeholders. 6, anything to add?
Our second one was the increased awareness of a future dark scenario, meant in the nicest way possible.